Let's check a couple of these out here. We've got What's Your Problem? These songs don't belong to America, Nimrod. Dylan wrote them. You get to enjoy them. They aren't public property, no matter how badly you feel about it. I bet you would have been one of the nitwits booing Dylan when he went electric. Oh no, he can't change. He belongs to the people. Then it concludes with go fornicate yourself. Right back at you, buddy. By the way, it's Mr. Nimrod to you. You can call me Mr. Nimrod. Hey everybody, I want to respond to the haters. I did a video about a year ago why I'm boycotting Bob Dylan. It was actually about copyright and corporate control of music, and I got about an 80-20 like to dislike ratio and a lot of negative comments, and the video's actually been privatized for 8 or 9 of the last 12 months. Like a lot of my videos, I privatized them, but I wanted to respond to the haters, and I hope you'll consider watching. You know, I did this video about a year ago, why I'm boycotting Bob Dylan, and I hope it wasn't misunderstood, because I certainly don't have any ill will towards Bob Dylan's music. I've been a Bob Dylan fan since like the 6th or 7th grade. I've got several of his albums. I just bought several more. And I also don't blame him for selling his catalog. That was probably a good financial move, and he certainly deserves the money. But as I said in that other video, I don't really feel the same about corporations controlling all this music through copyright and intellectual property laws, which are made by lawyers and politicians, not by musicians. But you know, corporations don't die, and as they gain control of literally 100 years worth of music and going on, no sign of stopping. I'm sure someday they'll own the Beatles. They're going to do to music what they've done to the rest of American society. You know, right by my house, there are a couple, not just one, but a couple empty big box Wal-Mart stores. They try to keep something going. They used to be these thriving kind of mall areas. You know, the Walmart was kind of the anchor store, and then you'd have other kind of nice stores. And now some of the smaller stores are trying to stay alive. But there were 3 Walmarts. In the 70s or 80s, there was one. I wasn't here then. In the 90s and 2000s, they moved. And where they moved is like a mile away from the original location. And they left a big, ugly, big box. Then they moved to another location a mile away, and they were in that location for the 90s and 2000s. Around 2010, they decided to move again, left another ugly big box, and they moved yet the grand total of about another mile away to build a super Walmart, which I hear isn't doing that well. As far as I'm concerned, that's a good thing. But they left a second big box store. Now there's a super Walmart, and all these Walmarts, 2 of which have been deserted, are within 3 miles of each other. I don't even think, literally. If you were young and strong, you could probably jog, you know, from one to the other, all 3, you know, a fairly nice jog. And that's what corporations do. And, you know, Walmart goes to existing communities. They don't really build markets. the old-fashioned way. They go to existing communities that have a healthy economy and a healthy society and a healthy community, and they build these big Walmart stores, and it's like a bubble that bursts. They're kind of there for a while. Then when they decide it's in their advantage to move, they just leave these wastelands. And there's actually a lot of homeless people that live by that big Walmart, and hopefully not much crime, although you could see how that was happening. And I'm just mentioning Walmart. We actually have a bunch of deserted big box stores. And that's sort of, in a way, what they're going to do to music. They're buying all this music now, like Bob Dylan. They're going to own it. They're not really going to, let other people play it. So Bob Dylan's music is mostly going to be cherished and enjoyed by people who already know it. And that's why they bought Bob Dylan. It's because there are millions of people who already know and love Bob Dylan. And they just want us to be the consumer base. We're like we're actually the asset. They didn't buy Bob Dylan's Blowing in the Wind. That's got like 3 chords and 3 beautiful verses, but that's not what they bought. They bought you, the Dylan fan. They bought that slice of America, that part of history that Dylan represents, and now they own it. Blowing in the Wind was written in 1962, and I sure hope they don't own it for the next 100 years, but you could see how that might happen. We do have a public domain in this country. You wonder if all these people that stick up for corporate music, were they raised singing music? Do they have pianos in their homes or guitars? Do they know a lot of the songs of our history? Did they have a nice little music program at the school? Not where they, just where they sang. Just sang, sang Erie Canal and, Yankee Doodle, and just did they do? I doubt it. I feel like if they did, they wouldn't have that opinion. And a hymnal, like this hymnal, that represents over 1,000 years of music that people in church have sung, and it's all kind of distilled down to some real gems in this hymnal, And by the way, in church music now, newer Christian music is all copywritten. I think that's one reason that you don't see a lot of new hymnals come out. This is a United Methodist hymnal. It came out in the 80s, and it's an excellent hymnal, whether you're a Methodist or not. But the music and the notation and the keys are all really nice, and the texts are all really nice. And but one reason I think they haven't replaced it is because a lot of the newer songs written since the 80s are you have to have lawyers to put anything in a book. So a lot of newer books, you walk through a church Christian bookstore, there are a lot fewer songs for a lot more money in all the books you can buy. And these old, I've got popular, and that was in the 60s. In the 70s, our family used to have books of popular songs, like Wendy and Who's Walking Down the Street, all those songs. And that's one of the reasons that young people don't know music, because they're not allowed to sing it without a lawyer present. Or they're told, well, you should just write your own songs. That's such a dumb thing to say. Nobody who plays music would ever say that. That's just such an ignorant comment. But I kind of wanted to share those thoughts. Somebody's calling me a Nimrod, telling me to go fornicate yourself. Right back at you, bud. Right back at you all day long. But anyway, I support music after a while going into the public domain, and I will continue to support that position for the rest of my life, which is actually the position of American history, and it was that way all the way until the 70s. And if you think about it, since the 80s, a lot of music hasn't entered into popular culture the way those older songs have. That's why we don't come up with new ones, I think. And when people don't grow up hearing Yankee Doodle, when they don't grow up hearing a hymn, or when they don't grow up hearing those tunes, then when you get older, you don't even really have a sense of melody and harmony, and all the little idioms that make popular music so wonderful. And I don't even think, sometimes I think, it's possible we'll have generations of people who don't even really relate to melody, classic melodies that were written on a nice piano, which is the way a lot of those songs were. So I didn't want to be too adversarial, but did want to respond a little bit and say that there's nothing wrong with supporting a vibrant public domain. My goodness gracious, we wouldn't have music. We wouldn't have Bob Dylan if we didn't have a public domain. He's a folk artist. Folk is the word for people. And we don't just want a lot of sort of acultural transplants that just see everything as some kind of a economic or consumer commodity. Music is of the people. It's a living, breathing thing. And yes, the artists should be well compensated and have control over the music for an extended period, during their lifetime. And in the old days, you could copyright, I think it was for 14 years, and then renew it by the work. That's what happened in 1998. You were legally, if you looked at a lot of those songs, you had to renew. You could renew them, I think, fairly indefinitely, but you had to do it by the work. Well, after decades, you had thousands and thousands of songs that you couldn't renew all those by. It's like a lot of things. Doing it the right way became too cumbersome, so you needed a copyright czar to just kind of wave a magic wand and say, oh, we're going to let all these corporations have all these copyrights. That was the exact moment that a lot of those old songs should have gone into the public domain. So I do feel kind of strongly about it, and from time to time I'll continue to talk about it. And certainly, if you don't think we need a healthy public domain for songs after a time so they can enter into the culture, you just... you must not know as much about music as you think you do, because we wouldn't have music without a public domain. Thanks. God bless.